panel is on the scene in Beirut with the latest on the new attacks overnight. Good morning, Ian.
Yeah, good morning, Robin. I think deeply worrying signs that this conflict risks spiraling out of control. The Iranian-backed militant group Hezbollah launching a surface-to-surface missile towards Tel Aviv this morning. According to Israel, this is the first time ever that they've done this. This morning, Israel intercepting a deadly Hezbollah missile. The militants say it was trying to attack Mossad HQ after that deadly pager attack. But Israel says it was heading towards civilian areas of Tel Aviv. It's the first time they've ever attacked the city and is another major escalation. And overnight, a massive explosion in Jia, south of Beirut. CCTV footage showing the strike as Israel warns more are being prepared. As the two warring sides ramp up their attacks, hundreds of thousands of families now internally displaced in just 3 days. We visited this school here in Beirut. It was to open for the new semester today. Instead, it's a shelter, offering beds and aid to the thousands fleeing the south. One family telling us they travelled for nearly 20 hours to get to safety. Two parents and their 5 children, their youngest, baby Mohammed, just 8 months old. And Afra tells us her priority over the last 24 hours was the safety of her kids. She describes her family's trek to safety as difficult and filled with destruction. The death toll across Lebanon rising to more than 550, with more than 1,800 injured. Not just fighters, but women and children too. Hezbollah firing back Tuesday, launching at least 13 attacks on Israel. Well, a senior U.S. official telling us that Hezbollah is moving long-range missiles around now as Israel mobilizes for possible cross-border raids.
I love when they say spiraling out of control when it has basically never been in Palestinian or Arab control or wholly in the control of the West. It's just like spiraling out of our control. I mean, it's true. 60% of the 2006 war in 2 days. Yep.
I mean, the U.S. and others have been working overtime to try and de-escalate the situation.
So we're going to cover, obviously, Antony Blinken. I covered the story yesterday. ProPublica came out with a report that showed that U.S. aid and other State Department agencies had collected obvious data that you and I are very familiar with because we follow this conflict closely, that showed Israel directly in violation of international human rights in terms of refusing to let in food and humanitarian aid into the area that they were mercilessly bombing. Now, this is a direct violation of international human rights, and if you do that, then America can't give you weapons. It is illegal for the United States of America to consistently offer you weapons if you are violating human rights. Okay? Denying humanitarian aid to a civilian population is that violation. Okay? And it seems that Antony Blinken was very aware of this human rights violation, and he chose to lie. Okay. Anyway, as we were talking about, Antony Blinken had full knowledge of this and yet still turned around and refused to acknowledge it because he knew that if he acknowledged it, then he would not be able to send unlimited, unrestricted weapons to Israel. And he lied time and time again openly. This puts him in criminal territory, for the record. Okay? And I'm not just saying that as like, I don't know type, this isn't just like a random activist Greenpeace type fucking attitude. This is like direct war crimes and key omissions of war crimes from another war criminal supporting a country doing war crimes. It is against American law. Okay? This is Oliver North shit. I mean, obviously, this is Iran-Contra type shit. Not that it matters, because look at what happened to Oliver North. Anyway.
We're joined by Secretary of State Antony Blinken in town for the United Nations General Assembly. Mr. Secretary, good morning to you. Thank you very much for being here. Boy, there's only so many times you can mention escalating tensions and risks of an all-out war before it becomes cliche, but things are definitely not going in the right direction. And I think there's a philosophy question here for the U.S. to answer.
A philosophy question. By the way, obviously, our media apparatus is unsurprisingly, not doing a very good job addressing this. Okay?
Do you end all of this violence in the Middle East by putting pressure on Israel to stop on both fronts, or do you empower Israel to finish the job?
Look, what we've seen since the horrific attacks on October 7th.
By the way, that's a direct Trump line. Something to think about. Anyway, I'm going to crack open a cold one here. Limited edition Oreo Zero Sugar Coca-Cola Creations Fizzy Cookie flavored. Okay? Limited time. As I listen to the Butcher Blinken himself, who loves to just keep on rocking in the free world, you know? Let me tell you, okay? It's not a fucking hashtag ad. Definitely not. I tried it last night. It was kind of ass, okay? I gave a review on TikTok, but I'm doing it again. Ugh. The Coke flavored Oreos are super bad. Hope the Oreo Coke is better. There's Coke flavored Oreos. Why are brands collaborating like this? This is the other reason why you don't have fucking healthcare, dog. It just doesn't taste that good. The comments on your TikTok were so funny. They were trying to cancel you for drinking it. Yes, dude. Ultimately, it does not matter. Just keep your fucking head down and keep advocating to free Palestine, okay? Who gives a shit that like a bunch of newcomers who have their heart in the right place, but their mind in a million different directions, fucking chirping. I don't care. The aftertaste is not something that I like. Both those brands are boycotted. No, they're not. They are not on the official BDS boycott list. Stop. Why is this community so annoying? Because a lot of people mistake being leftist as being annoying, and the more annoying you are, the more leftist you are. Thanks, Hasan. You just killed 10 kids? Yeah. I saved 10 kids, and then I killed 10 kids. I'm balancing it out. Are we seriously trying to do the I'm woke with it now shit in the chat? Yes. I mean, people do that all the time. This is one of the few communities online. This is one of the few communities online that is on the left that absolutely doesn't pay any mind to that kind of shit. And I try to always steer people in the best direction possible, you know? But yeah, there are plenty of spaces where people don't do that, and it's fine. I don't really care. It ultimately doesn't matter. I mean, the amount of people, even on that like Chapel Roan, Hassan Piker like tweet that got a shit ton of likes, the QRTs were filled to the brim with like free Palestine types who were upset at me over my opinion on Venezuela and Cuba, upset at me for not being sufficiently radical enough, upset at me for being too radical. It doesn't matter, okay? Just fucking keep saying, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to continue doing what I do. I don't really care about the opinions of newcomers. It hasn't changed my direction. It has not changed my mind even a little bit over the past decade, and it will not change my mind in the foreseeable future, okay? Does it upset me to see people so easily duped? Yeah, a little bit. There is no need for, COINTELPRO or anything like that. There's no need for any kind of like federal law enforcement to try and engage in like disruptive behavior, because the left's organizational tools are already withered away entirely, and we kind of do it to ourselves anyway. Let's continue.
Are periods when we've had a real risk of escalation, a real risk of something turning into a full-blown war, including in Lebanon between Israel and Hezbollah. And through diplomacy, through deterrence, we've managed to avert that in the days immediately following October 7th. More recently in April, we're focused right now on making sure that we can...
Chapel's BFF follows you on IG. You should try and get her on stream. I don't know who Chapel's BFF is. But if that's like an actual route that I can take, then I would, 100%. The left here is so focused on individualistic virtues versus consistent solidarity. Yeah.
De-escalate, avoid a full-scale war. But, Tony, Israel's got a legitimate problem here. Starting on October 8th, Hezbollah in the north from southern Lebanon started lobbing rockets and missiles into Israel. People living in northern Israel had to flee their homes, about 70,000. And Israel, understandably, legitimately, wants a secure environment so people can return home. The best way to get that is through diplomacy, an agreement to pull back forces, allow people to return home in northern Israel. Also, many Lebanese in southern Lebanon forced from their homes. We want to get people back home. The best way to do that is not war, it's diplomacy.
So Hezbollah went to their weapon systems. Hezbollah began firing into Israel
That's right.
after October 7th in allyship with Hamas and the people
Exactly.
in Gaza. Where does ceasefire talks stand? Because if that is their motivation there on the Hezbollah side, that's the key to making them pull back and stop.
That would certainly be one of the keys. It would be an ideal key because it would end the horrific situation in Gaza, horrific for the hostages, horrific for so many men, women, and children who've been caught in this crossfire of Hamas's making. We've been working on this ceasefire deal for a while. We have an agreement, a piece of paper that's got 18 paragraphs. 15 of them are agreed. The last 3 continue to need some work. The problem we have right now is that Hamas hasn't been engaging on it for the last couple of weeks.
Oh my God. Oh, this conversation should be, the centerpiece of this conversation should be, hey, if you're working tirelessly for a ceasefire, why haven't you really, like, are there no levers that you can pull or push on in terms of, like, motivating Israel to do the thing that you want them to do? If you don't want Israel to escalate the conflict into Lebanon, is there, I don't know, something that you could do that you haven't done so far? If our journalists weren't pure stenographers / mouthpieces for the Israeli government, pretty much, or at least the State Department, whose goals currently are directly lined up with Israel's deadly conquest in the region, they would ask these questions. They would say, hey, for the past 12 months at this point, America has consistently talked about how upset they are with the way Israel is conducting itself and has regularly demanded Israel to restrain itself. Israel has not, seemingly. Israel is also, according to this report in front of us from ProPublica, was violating human rights, things that we have reported on mainstream media as well, in terms of like denying humanitarian aid to a civilian population that is mercilessly bombing, slowly but surely changing the dynamic between what is considered a safe zone, which is also another violation of international human rights law, and bombing humanitarian safe zones, killing more UN workers and more humanitarian aid workers than ISIS and Al-Qaeda combined over the course of the past 11 to 12 months, including Western American citizens, and not just like American citizens who have Palestinian citizenship as well, like American citizens with no other citizenship, British citizens, Australian citizens. And at no point has Israel ever seemingly shown that they would demonstrate restraint at all. So, which is it? Are you the worst politician? Are you the worst statesman of all time? Are you a fucking idiot? Or are you purely evil? And you like that Israel is doing these things. Bro, they can just pull a lever to stop it. The United States aligns with realism, but the narrative they decide to present is that we have liberal motivations and Palestine bad. Yeah, I think it's straight up beyond like material needs at this point. I think it goes into ideological territory for a lot of these allegiances. Genuinely. Like, I know I talk a big game about the material necessity for America's like undying loyalty to Israel because it's a military base planted firmly in the middle of a resource-rich region, for sure. That is the primary motivator for America. But I think that the secondary reason is it's not AIPAC, for those of you saying it's AIPAC. AIPAC is just one aspect of this. I think the scarier reason for our endless amount of support for Israel is an ideological commitment, a genuine ideological commitment, okay? paired up with America's power at the global stage diminishing, okay, where Israel is seen as the only reliable country that has endless loyalty back to the United States of America, because Israel could not exist without the United States of America in a way that Egypt could, right? Egypt takes a shit ton of money from the United States of America, but Egypt could technically go somewhere else. Historically, they have, right? So I think that this is the last bastion, like the last ride or die ally that America can maintain in the area that isn't filled to the brim with Muslims, a Muslim population that could technically overthrow its American puppet government, for example. Egypt, once again, comes to mind. So for that reason, I think, like Saudi Arabia, great example, very important partner for American dominance in the region. Still, Muslim nation, literally did 9/11, and has in the past, even in its monarchy structure, actually went against America's wishes and still continues to go against America's best interest in terms of like how it moves with OPEC plus. Israel does not have that. Israel will do espionage to the American State Department from time to time. Israel will kill American troops from time to time. But ultimately, I think the allegiance between Israel and America is ideological, but also tighter than all these other countries. Because I think in some ways there is genuinely this fear. I think about this all the time. I literally nonstop think about this because it just seems so stupid. It seems so stupid from the perspective of maintaining American dominance to continue on this double suicide pact with Israel. Like, what could be the motivator? What could be the reason? And I think it is because I think it is partially a direct consequence of like America recognizing its power, both soft power and hard power, waning around the planet. And this is like their last real fucking ride or die ally. So they have to let them do whatever the fuck they want to do. Hey, I'm from Iran. They're not just escalating the war in Lebanon. It seems like they're looking for another 9/11 to justify attacking Iran by Trump terror attempt bullshit. Yes, this is something that I've talked about yesterday as well. But at what point does Israel cost more than it's worth? Yes, it's a military base in a U.S. state, but its base is worth maintaining through all of this. I think that that is the calculation that they have in front of them right now, which is that it's gone past the point of being worth it, but it doesn't matter. They're too invested. It's a sunk cost.
And Sinwar, its leader, has been talking about an endless war of attrition.
Oh, that's the other aspect of it too. I think there is a lot of like white supremacist, Islamophobic racism at play as well. Israel's the head of the spear of Western civilization, whiteness against Muslim terror. I think that definitely plays a role as well. At least ideologically in the minds and hearts of a lot of these people in positions of power. You have to remember, a lot of these people that cynically deploy these narratives when they're trying to justify the war on terror, for example, they do believe it. Some of these people do believe it. It's kind of like the Trump phenomenon when we talk about like Trump and how the Republican Party was celebrating the Tim Walz choice because they were like, he's so radical. Everyone's going to hate him. You guys really fucked up by doing this. It was a little bit wish casting on their part, but it was also partially something that they truly believed. They do truly believe that like America would consider Tim Walz to be far too fucking radical. Obviously, that didn't work, and it didn't happen, even though the Harris camp still basically backpocketed Tim Walz for some weird fucking reason, because they just want to lose, I guess. But sometimes it's about the symbol and not the practicality. The U.S. doesn't need Cuba, but allowing them to thrive would be costly to maintaining power over the rest of the global South, kind of beat. Yeah, it's kind of like the execution. In some ways, it's kind of like the execution of the Missouri state-sanctioned execution of Marcellus Williams, right? Like, he's innocent, all signs point to it, and yet he was still executed last night at 6:10 p.m. Missouri time. Why? Why was he still executed when everybody understood that he was not guilty of the crime that the state claimed he committed? Even the people, the prosecutor's office was maintaining his innocence, saying that this is wrong. Why did they do it? Partially to uphold white supremacy, and partially because if you cave and capitulate to the demands being made by the public, then all of a sudden they're going to be like, well, we got a W here. They're going to ask for more. They're going to start analyzing the death sentences of every single person. We know as a matter of fact that at least 4%, at minimum, the most conservative estimation, at minimum, 4% of people executed by the state are completely innocent, like exonerated. Okay? Exonerated after death, usually, or even before, but they still continue the execution. Once you start realizing that the state is like, killing a bunch of people that it knows is innocent, then you have a very different analysis on the death penalty. And if you know a lot, and then a lot of people start going, wait, I don't want this. What the fuck? And by the way, for the record, anti-death penalty in a country as draconian as the United States of America, for the first time in its history, one of the only instances, is a more popular position than being pro-death penalty. Think about that. For the first time, I believe in years, in the United States of America, the majority public opinion is anti-death penalty, which is crazy to think about because for the Europeans who are watching right now, Americans are really fucking aggressive in terms of how to punish criminals. If you didn't know that, Americans are unique in the Western world in comparison to our OECD nations in the way that we view the death penalty. Let's continue.
Now, if he really cares about the Palestinian people, he'd bring this agreement over the finish line.
Mr. Secretary, do you believe that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu truly wants a ceasefire?
If we're talking about Gaza, as I said, I think hard decisions remain to be made by Israel. But the problem right now, in terms of bringing this across the finish line, is Hamas. Its refusal to engage in a meaningful way. We've been at this.
Hamas is refusing to engage in a meaningful way with the country that executed the principal negotiator, which once again we just kind of forgot about. I love when we just like memory hole so much of the awful things that Israel has done throughout this entire fucking process. And it's also directly a consequence of the guys that are supposed to be asking these questions. Like, what do you mean Hamas's refusal to engage in a meaningful way? Like, sure, okay, they're a designated terror organization. That's one thing. But also Israel executed their principal negotiator in violation of the sovereignty of a separate state, Iran. A state that you have said you do not want Israel to go to direct conflict with.
In recent weeks, again, trying to get these
So in
last
that part,
things
do you put blame on Israeli Prime Minister
What we're
Netanyahu?
seeing is this. I don't think this is a question really anymore of the substance of the agreement, because it's very close. It is a question of political will. In the first instance, that political will needs to be demonstrated by Hamas. We haven't seen it the last couple of weeks. Israel would have some hard decisions to make to bring this to a close, but we've got to see if Hamas is actually serious.
Mr. Secretary, ProPublica has determined that 2 agencies found that Israel is deliberately stopping humanitarian aid from getting to civilians. And as you well know, the U.S. government says that it has to restrict supplying weapons to a country that does this type of thing. Why have we not done so?
Yeah. So this is actually pretty typical. We had a report to put out on the humanitarian situation in Gaza and what Israel was doing to try to make sure that people got the assistance they needed. And I had different assessments from different parts of the State Department, from other agencies that were involved, like USAID. My job is to sort through them, which I did, draw some conclusions from that, and we put out our report. And we found that Israel needs.
He's like, yeah, we found a report, but then we also found out, that doesn't correspond to our best interest here, okay? Because we are still interested in giving Israel unlimited weapons. So we decided to just omit that. And also lie to Congress, by the way. Like, that's his own department being like, hey, man, this is fucked up. Like, it's getting a little bit out of control, don't you think? And he's like, yeah, shut the fuck up. That's what's going on here. Is this sort of pushback on CBS Mornings a good sign? Yeah, if they keep up this pushback, even at the end of this interview or tomorrow or the day after, then yeah, it's a good sign because it means that things are changing. If they simply ask this question and then let him get away with this like wishy-washy bullshit answer, especially when you look at the time remaining in this fucking video, I suspect that they do let him get away with this, and then never cover this story ever again, then yeah, no, they're complacent and they don't give a fuck and they just did their due diligence to maintain a veneer of credibility. They have to still maintain an air of credibility so that they can continue doing propaganda. Remember that. This is that part. This is the unique part. This is the unceremonious, like every now and then when you go, hold on, what the fuck is the media saying? That's crazy. Let's hear it. Let's hear it one more time. What her question was directly about the ProPublica, article that showed that U.S. aid and the State Department, its own internal investigations, created a memo, 17 pages long, that showed Antony Blinken, without a shred of doubt, that Israel was violating international human rights laws and therefore weapons transfers would be threatened, okay? Because it's in direct contravention with American laws on top of the Geneva Convention and international human rights laws, okay? Continuing to defend weapons transfers to Israel's means that he is in violation. He is a war criminal himself. And in a just world, he would be going to jail. That is the reality. But, of course, it's not going to happen.
What Israel was doing to try to make sure that people got the assistance they needed. And I had different assessments from different parts of the State Department, from other agencies that were involved, like USAID. My job is to sort through them, which I did, draw some conclusions from that, and we put out our report. And we found that Israel needed to do a better job on the humanitarian assistance. We've seen improvements since then. It's still not sufficient.
Secretary Blinken, the man in the arena, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
Wow. So I guess they didn't. Okay, got it. So I guess there is no follow-up. Got it. Okay, here is, let's hear what Savannah Guthrie said to Antony Blinken. He's doing the rounds right now after this report came out in an effort to do some propaganda, to do some counter-propaganda.
Right now in the Middle East, as you well know, a massive bombardment by Israel to the north into Hezbollah territory. The Israeli theory here is escalate to de-escalate. In fact, just in essence, hit Hezbollah so hard they're forced to the negotiating table. Put simply, does the U.S. support this escalation strategy by Israel?
Well, first, Israel has a real and legitimate problem, because here's what happened. After the horrific events of October 7th by Hamas in Israel, in the south, Hezbollah from Lebanon joined in and started firing rockets into Israel. People who lived in northern Israel had to evacuate their homes. Villages were destroyed, homes were destroyed. 70,000 Israelis were forced from their homes. And Israel started firing back. You had a tit for tat going back and forth. People in southern Lebanon had to leave their homes too. And what everyone wants is to have a secure environment in which people can simply return home. Kids can go back to school. That's what Israel's after. So the best way to get that is not through war, not through escalation. It would be through a diplomatic agreement that has forces pulled back from the border, create a secure environment, people return home. That's what we're driving toward, because while there's a very legitimate issue here, we don't think that war is the solution.
Well, fair enough. Israel is not listening to that. In fact, the U.S. Defense Secretary on Sunday told his Israeli counterpart to give time for diplomacy to work. And on Monday, this Israeli bombardment was the most serious, deadliest day in Lebanon since 2006. Yeah, well, so Israel is not listening to the U.S. Why not?
What we're focused on now, including with many partners here in New York at the UN General Assembly, the Arab world, Europeans and others, is a plan to de-escalate and, again, to make sure that people can go back to their homes. But if there were to be...
Yeah, de-escalate through escalations. De-escalation through escalation. That's just how it goes. Wait, isn't this what they say Hamas did on October 7? Hit so hard they listened to you? No, there is no Look, Israel good, Hamas bad. Israel good, Palestinian bad. Israel good, Lebanon bad. Israel good, Iran bad. That's it. Israel does it, it's good. Anyone else that retaliates against it is bad, okay? Understand that, and you will understand a lot of what this commentary revolves around. That's it. That's just simply it. Okay? There is no moral consistency here. There is no intellectual curiosity here. That is it. Okay? They are trying to goad any regional actor that is, they're trying to goad any regional actor to fucking retaliate so they can bring the United States in to defend Israel directly, so they can have a just cause, a righteous cause for vengeance once again. Because the October 7 propaganda is no longer hitting as hard after you have fucking annihilated an entire Palestinian population and displaced millions of fucking civilians. So obviously, they need like another October 7 to just really fucking kick it into high gear. Hamas poked the bear, which was a really weird move. Brother, I need you to understand something, okay? These are people who are trapped in an open-air prison with no way out of it, okay? That's it. Saying that Hamas simply poked the bear is so stupid because you are basically behaving as though Israel itself is not a Western-aligned nation that requires steady support from the American government and unlimited fucking resource from the American government to prosecute its genocide. Okay? And is a force of, is just like a, it's not comprised of people. It's just like a natural, a naturally occurring phenomenon. It's not, that's not correct. In the bear analogy, if Israel is the bear, okay, that bear is already swiping at every fucking Palestinian every goddamn day. It's sitting on top of the Palestinians. It's swiping at the Palestinians. And the moment that a Palestinian pushes back, you turn around and you say, well, they poked the bear, sorry. But it also comes with the recognition that Israel is an irrational actor in this process. So you're not making the argument that you think you're making that is defensive of Israel's posture here. Okay? So yes, you're not wrong. Israel is behaving in an irrational manner, like a bear. When a bear kills humans, that bear must be put down. When a bear engages in the taste of human flesh, that bear has to be put down. Otherwise, it will strike humans again. So there you have your analogy.